Let's take a look at how to do multiple regression in Python. So we're going to use a data set that we used in class. Today we'll use the expenditure versus SAT data and teacher salary, percent of people taking the SAT state by state. So we start by importing some libraries that we'll need. We probably won't need to set up a random number generator, but if we do, this is a good way to do it. Here we're saying what's the URL of the data we want to load, and stating some regression formulas that we're going to use. This one is for some Pennsylvania school district data, but here's the one that we're going to use today. Average total SAT score, average teacher salary, and percent of students taking the SAT. And we'll be saying our y variable is the average total SAT in the state, and that's being predicted by the percent of pupils taking the SAT and the average teacher salary. Giving a formula like this is asking it to come up with a coefficient to multiply this by and a coefficient to multiply this by, along with an intercept term that's just kind of taken for granted, and it will do the regression for us later. Here we're just setting up what we'll want to do. Here's where we actually read in the data from the web. If you have a small data set and you don't mind pasting it into your notebook, here's a way you can paste in the data and then read kind of from that big string. Here we're just doing a little bit of basic manipulation. Don't need to worry about that for now. Here's a description using the data frame describe function of each column. So how many items are in the column, what's the mean of the column, what's the standard deviation of the column, etc. So sometimes that can be helpful to look at. So here's where we're actually doing the regression. We're setting it up here, saying what formula we want to use for the regression, and then we're saying, okay, please go actually compute the best coefficients. So like I said, here's the regression formula that we're using. So we're trying to predict average total SAT based on percent of people taking the SAT and average teacher salary. And it gives us an output table that's kind of like what Excel's multiple regression tool gives us, like number of observations, the R squared, adjusted R squared, which we'll talk about later. It even shows us what date and time we ran the model, in case we ever want to go back and show when we did the work, kind of like a science notebook. It shows us what the dependent variable was, that's the y variable. And it gives us this column of coefficient estimates for our this column and that column, and then some things down here that would make a lot more sense if we were in a linear regression analysis class. So that's how you can run a regression, and I wrote a little function here that will read the results of the regression, all the coefficients, and write out a nice long string with full precision that is the model we came up with for predicted values. And then I wrote some code here that will make residual plots, like residuals versus one of the x variables, residuals versus the other x variable, and then some code that will do line fit plots like Excel does versus each variable automatically, and then a predicted scores on the x-axis and residuals on the y-axis. And then stats models itself, that's the package that does the regression for us using the formulas. It can do plots that will actually show some of the uncertainty range in some of the predictions, so that's nice. And then it has similar things versus residuals. These two plots, partial regression and CCPR, again, are better for a linear regression analysis class. Then I'll pose an interesting question for us. We had columns in the data that we didn't use, and what would happen if we included them in the regression for the SAT by state district by state data? What if we also included the row number? I mean, that's a number. You can use it in a regression formula. So if we do that, what will happen to the regression? Will things get better? Should they get better? So think about that, and maybe we'll talk about it in class.